What's up, everybody? It is September 13th, and it's episode 83 of Coffee with Den. We're doing this at 8 p.m. now. So if you want to hear about all the things and stuff, throw us up on the tab, give us a listen, or if you want to join, I'll show you how to do that in just a second. I'm not going to have coffee. I'm going to have this atomic tart, compliments of Lidl, the German grocery store that I found recently. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go through and look and see what people have been posting, what's trending over on Den.Social. There's some interesting stuff up. There's a new LCP. We can go over some of the layers that people have been proposing. There's a couple of interesting ones that I was looking at there, and some I haven't seen yet. I Am brought one up specifically. So we'll check that out. And if you want to pop in, I'll tell you about rattlesnakes at the zoo. So let's see. If you go over, to show you real quick, if you wanted to join the call, there's a page over on Den.Social, Coffee with Den. If you scroll down, or even like in the YouTube comments, there's a link. You can join live if you want to join. Otherwise, I'm going to take this at my own pace, and you can listen to all the things. Looks like we got Sinfully Cerebral in the comments. What's up? Late Night Coffee. Thanks for joining us, man. Told you I was going to start back up in September. So here we are. We had Gravity Crab on last week. He's out today because, not to spill his beans or be too personal on his behalf, but he had a rough day in the shop. So he's going to sit this one out, and I don't blame him. Sometimes you're the bug, and sometimes you're the windshield. And I think today he was the bug. All right. So we've got this playing over on Odyssey and Twitter and YouTube. It's going to be pretty chill. I don't know what the evening format's really going to look like, so we're going to make it up as we go. We do have an active LCP. I forgot about that until just last night, actually, so that's still open. And why don't we just jump right into it and see what people have been proposing. I know I Am had one he was interested in. He's actually competing with the nationalism layer, his election 24 layer, I think. So we'll look at that. So September, let's just go to the LCP section. This is the post about it, but if I open up my window a little bit further, there's a dang old link. We can look and see who's winning. This is open for 5 days, and they're down to just like 1 or 2 a month now because the demand has really slowed down. There's been a lot of them created that are sort of, I don't know, I'll say dead. People haven't even made artwork for them yet. So although they're still being created, we slowed them down to just 1 and 1. National tradition. This is the one I called the nationalism layer. And I thought it was interesting. That's the one that I am for I am mentioned as the nationalism layer. I don't know if it is a nationalism layer, but let's read about it. This was proposed by who? Who brought this one up? Oh, that didn't go where I thought. It doesn't link correctly, of course. Oh, Bijbi. Baby. I bet it's baby. Like if the J is a H sound, like in Spanish, or is it Spanish? Yeah, like jalapeno, baby. So baby proposed national tradition. Description of this one. The tradition of the people is a rich and inexhaustible treasure that should be opened, discovered, and known, and preserved from oblivion. The priceless values that make the beauty of the nation spirit. Types of content. Please post pictures, videos, and other files of the customs of your region, from celebrations, weddings, holidays, Christmas, Easter, birthdays, funeral, all the things. Show how your ancestors celebrated some important event and how you cherish your tradition. You know, this is kind of interesting to me because I'm from sort of a patchwork family. I don't have necessarily a strong traditional line. My family's from all over. I think I trace my family back to Georgia, is as far back as I know. So as far as I know, my family traditions are hunting squirrels and riding dirt bikes and pouring concrete, which ain't nothing wrong with that. Expected audience. All people who appreciate and keep their traditions alive. So I want to just point out what I am wrote about this one. So I am had proposed the election 24 layer, which is going to be a hot topic, of course, for better or for worse. It hasn't even really taken off yet, and I'm sick of the 2024 election already. But I am says globalism is on the decline and nationalism is on the rise. Boo, I was hoping for the 24 election layer. Things are heating up. And I replied, I wonder if it's possible to have globalism, and this is for you, Sinfully Cerebral, something I would love to talk to you about and get your opinion on. I wonder if it's possible to have globalism without leading to a monoculture, or to have nationalism without the competitive tribalism. Because when I think of nationalism, I think of war. When I think of globalism, I think of war, right? It always leads to war. And so I'm always interested in how we can avoid that kind of thing. But I wonder, right? Because globalism, to me, the fear of globalism is sort of around this idea of making everything the damn same everywhere. One world government, you know, that kind of thing. And then nationalism, the fear of nationalism is this idea of, you know, us against the world and fighting against everyone else in sort of a tribal, vicious sort of way. But yeah, I'm with Sinfully Cerebral here. I don't think that necessarily it has to be that way. I think it's very possible in a kumbaya sort of Star Trek-y kind of way. And Star Trek's an interesting one too, to sort of compare things to. I'm not even that big of a Trekkie, but I find myself comparing things to that sort of idealistic society where you can have all of the good parts of all the different traditions at the same time. Like sometimes I wonder if you could have some parts of society socialized while you have other parts of the economy capitalized and free marketed. You know, can you have a hodgepodge of the best of all the things? Or maybe I'm just daydreaming. But anyway, yeah, so that's a layer proposal. Let's go back and see the others. Of course, we have the 24, we just mentioned it, the US elections layer. This was proposed by I Am for I Am, who's really a lot more in tune with politics than I am, at least in an intelligent way, in an experienced kind of way. I may opine about it quite a bit. But he's somebody I actually enjoy listening to opinions on. He has qualified opinions. So the layer description here is a layer where anyone can post information, news, opinions, and 24 election memes or humor content. Oh, the memes will be everywhere. I've already seen them in another tab that I have pulled open over here. Everyone loves to make fun of people who are running for office, so that'll be fun. While this layer is political in nature, it's more focused on the elections, candidates that announce, debates among candidates, party platforms, U.S. Congress seats, Senate races, governors, state races, all the fun stuff that people love. Yeah, I remember the last elections. I was a Yang gang kind of guy. And, there were some debates among the candidates for a little while. But that was really the only, it was like a small little window where we all believed for just a moment that maybe we could have a choice of, some new blood coming in. But it was short lived. I was in Florida and I didn't even get to vote for the guy that I wanted because as they made their way around the states and did their debates and held their elections, at some point, I think after North Carolina, they just sort of called it and said, nope, here's who you're going to get. So it was fun while it lasted. We'll see how long we get to go this time. I feel like we have the technology to do it all at the same time these days. We just don't use it. So let's see, best part. While other sites might limit, sanction, or censor content, Den has a unique ability to allow free speech. Yes, we do. Denizens are quick to post up solid content and content that is grounded in facts. They're also quick to post up some bullshit. Just keep that in mind. We're also quick to point out fake news and fallacious factoids. That sounds like an album title right there, right? Fallacious factoids. Maybe we go into the music layer here in a few minutes. Types of content. Discussion on candidates. We already covered that. Let's see. Expected audience. Yeah, who do you expect to be in here? Anybody who has something to say about the 24 elections at any level or wants to post news about upcoming elections. Okay. Yeah, as the elections heat up, I wonder, Den was around technically last time during the elections and stuff, but really it was kind of a catalyst for, not a catalyst. I would say it was a demonstration for the need for something like Den, because whether or not I agree with a lot of things that were being censored, the fact that there was a lot of censorship going on, borderline election interference kind of thing. Even if it was stuff that I didn't like and I was glad to see go, I wasn't happy to see it manipulated in the way that it was. So it'll be interesting this go around. Den has stayed online through this first presidency term of Biden, and will be online during the elections. So I wonder how much of that we'll get to see Den hosting content that would be otherwise censored. And then also, when people are searching the internet for conversations that they want to have, opinions, different people's points of view, and they can't find them on some platforms, like YouTube or like Twitter or like, I don't know, what do people do? Pinterest and stuff like that. When you can't find those conversations there, or you can only find them in places like 4chan, where you have to dig through the cesspool of human shit to find the gem or the nugget of interesting information. I wonder if they'll find Den and say, oh, look, there's actually interesting stuff here, and I can join in without a bunch of people making me not want to be in the room. That's what I hope for, at least. That's my hope. So those are two good, interesting proposals, and it happens to be the two that are it's number 1 and 2 by lore committed. So we're going to get one from each category, and it looks like National Tradition has got 5.4 million lore committed. That means if it wins, which I'll go ahead and say it probably will in this category, with that much of a lead, the next in line is 2 million. So if National Tradition wins in the lore category, that's going to be 5.4 million governance tokens or NFTs that get created. So that'll be cool. Now, in the other category, unique voter, it doesn't matter how many votes, it just matters how many unique accounts have voted for it. And in the lead there is the vegan layer, which is interesting because I didn't know we had that many vegans on Den. Den's got a pretty mixed bag of people, but I see a lot of meat dishes being written about in the food layer. Although, I don't know. Unicorn posted something about lettuce in the food layer, in the health and nutrition layer. So maybe we'll check that out and see if there's any clues about their preferences. So types of content, a layer where you can share plant-based recipes, discuss vegan bodybuilding, nutrition advices, tips, and motivational videos related to veganism. Vegan bodybuilding, that's like regular bodybuilding, right? You just don't eat the meats, you don't eat the animals? Or is it like, because vegan's a whole thing, right? It's what clothes you wear, it's the choices you make and things like that. I wonder what else there is to it. Or maybe there's just more to bodybuilding. Maybe it's more difficult and you got to pick your diet more carefully because you're not eating all the proteins, or at least from the same source. All right, so that's 34, and the next one up is 28 in the fair contest layer. So you could see fair contests make its way up. And then anti-work. I think I might have proposed anti-work. It was a long time ago. Does it show who proposed it? No, it doesn't. It is Sebadingus. Sebadingus proposed it. I remember I liked it being proposed. I must have just... Here's the thing. Is I thought it was super ironic that over on Reddit, you had the Trump layer, which is very, I would say, right-wing, right-leaning, conservative, was banned from Reddit. And then the anti-work layer, which I would say is very left-leaning, like extremely left, very sort of socialist and sort of, hey, we can not have to be wage slaves in the same sort of way that the right-leaning ones were saying we don't have to be wage slaves, but different opinions on how you pull that off. And they both got banned, right? So anti-work got banned, the Trump layer got banned. And so I was like, yeah, dude, we should totally get all the banned subreddits over on Den. So I don't know if sort of the, I don't know if it's too late, because this is what, 22? Yeah, 2222. So this was over a year ago. And I don't know if it's still interesting enough to get some of the people that were on anti-work before it got banned to come hang out over here instead. But that was my thought. I think that would be cool. So I wouldn't be mad about that. I didn't like a lot of what they had to say whenever the subreddit's representative went on the news on cable TV to talk about their movement. I didn't think that was a very good rep for the movement, but you get what you get. Types of content: open layer discussions to vent and discuss about existing and potential work or jobs. Existing and potential work or jobs. Post questions to others about the work environment, problems with coworkers, how to get paid more, career pivots. This doesn't seem like anti-work. This seems like a better work. This seems like, hey, my job sucks. How do I make it better? And how do I get paid more for my job? So maybe I have the wrong idea about what anti-work is. Audience members will come to this layer in time, as I would assume most users of Den are in their adulthood and very likely in the workforce to some degree. That is very true. That's why I was at the zoo today. I was working, not today, yesterday and Monday. I was working at the zoo, man. Just a reminder, if you look in the YouTube description, or if you go to the Coffee with Den layer on Den.Social, you can click this join live StreamYard link, and you can hop on and chat. Now, that's the leadership. That's the likely winners in the LCP. I won't go through all of them, but unless somebody comes in and lays a bunch of lore down, we're probably going to get national tradition. And unless a bunch of people come in and vote, or people that are in the vegan layer remove their vote, because you could actually come down here and withdraw from the vegan layer. So unless people withdraw from the vegan layer or add a bunch to like anti-work or fair contest layer, then we're probably going to see vegan layer and national tradition as it stands right now. But there's 5 days left, so who knows? Did I miss another new LCP? What did I miss? Please elaborate. What did I miss this month? I've missed a lot because I haven't been very, like, I'm a public kind of person. I don't mind sharing my biz, but I don't know how else to say it. I got kind of freaked out. I had some, death threats come my way. And so I've been a little bit more private about my movements and where I am and telling people about my life. But I have been doing a whole new thing lately, and I have been missing quite a lot. Number 19. Let's scroll down to number 19. Motivational quotes. Man, there's something I need some of. You know, I signed up for GPT, the Pro, like GPT-4, and I have been talking to the AI a lot. I mean, I've really been flexing it, and it's impressive. And one of the things that I did was, I had a little conversation. It dropped to 20. All right. Well, let me talk about my little motivational quote since I started talking about it already. I was talking to GPT just like it was a person. Seems legit. Like it seems very human to talk to. And I said, I'm starting a new job. I'm starting a new, trajectory, a new thing in life, and I kind of need a personal mantra to keep myself positive. And I had this little back and forth with it, and it helped me come up with a new personal mantra that I can keep in mind to keep myself motivated. And now that I've said it, I got to make sure I remember it correctly. It was something like honor the effort and enjoy the journey. And I like that. So there's my little motivational quote, personal mantra AI story. Now, what cerebral really meant was this one. I'll try to pronounce it. Philosophia novus. Novo. Is that like French? Like Bordeaux, Novus, Novexus? I don't know what the phonetic pronunciation of that is. So simply cerebral. This is yours. All right. So Philosophia Novuxus, Novus. You have to phonetically spell that for me so that I can stop butchering it. It serves as a haven for those who seek profound insights and engage in meaningful discourse spanning a wide spectrum of philosophical, psychological, and metaphysical subjects. Our layers culture is deeply rooted in intellectual rigor, mutual respect, and an unwavering pursuit of wisdom. We hold reason as the supreme faculty of the mind and strive to apply it to all our discussions. I like that. I like logic um, as a discussion tool, right? Holding reason as a supreme faculty of the mind. And I try to use it as much as possible because I talk to a lot of people with differing opinions, and I appreciate all the opinions, but I sort of sometimes I need to get to some common ground before we can even continue the conversation. I'll give you an example. But before I do, let's read this phonetic pronunciation here. Philosophia Novaexis. All right. Philosophia Novaexis. Philosophia Novaexis. That sounds fancy as fuck. I like fancy stuff too. But what I was saying is logic, reason as the supreme faculty of the mind. I have a hard time talking to people about things that, and not that we disagree on them. That's not the hard part. The hard part is just sort of speaking logically about them. And the example that comes to mind right away is I was talking to somebody about India landing on the moon. They had a successful moon landing recently. And I was talking to somebody who doesn't believe in moon landings, which is fine. Believe whatever you want to believe. But they were talking about, oh yeah, did you hear about the fake moon landing? And I was like, yeah, like a long time ago, like in the 60s, the fake moon landing. Like I think that it wasn't a fake moon landing, but that's not the point. And they were like, oh no, with India, they landed on the moon. And they were saying, which is obviously impossible because we can't get past the Van Allen belt or whatever it's called. So there's this theory that humans can't travel into space because there's this Van Allen belt or whatever it's called, an area around the Earth at a certain distance where if a human or a biological form were to pass through it, you basically get fried or whatever, right? Too many space particles bombarding you, you can't survive the trip. So there's no way that we made it to the moon, and thus the moon landing is fake. So that logic was being applied to India's moon landing, saying, well, we can't get past the Van Allen belt, so their moon landing was obviously fake and it's a big hoax. Isn't that crazy? And the issue I had with that is not that I disagree about the moon landing being fake, because I think we totally go to the moon, and that's obviously possible, my opinion, based on my experience. My problem, though, was with the logic of the argument. Like, let's assume that what you're saying is true. Let's assume that the moon landing back in the 60s was fake because humans, biological entities, can't make it through a certain point. You can't use that as an argument for why India's moon landing was fake, because it was a robotic mission. There were no biological life forms on the freaking thing. They sent an empty spacecraft that was piloted remotely and landed on the moon without a human in it. So to think because of the Van Allen belt we can't survive space travel is a reason to dismiss India's achievement in landing on the moon is absurd to me. And we couldn't get past that. And that is such a basic, fundamental logic flaw that I couldn't even continue the conversation. So that's where, I don't know, that's where this layer kind of appeals to me, because being able to use reason to get through a conversation is important. Because I can't, if we're not standing in the same universe, if we're not from the same, like, if we can't agree on the logic of an argument, if I can't see at least why you think, oh, that makes sense why you would think that, then I just don't, I don't know what to say, So there's my story on that. Yeah, most people do have very faulty logic, and me too, a lot of times, until I really sit and think about it. Like, it's hard, logic can be hard, is hard. A lot of things that come naturally to you that you either assume and don't think that, like, you don't realize you're making assumptions based on false logic. You don't really understand that your logic is faulty until someone challenges you on it, which is why this is a great layer proposal. So why is my share 0%? And there's 4 unique voters? Let's change that. Before we do, let's browse through some of these bullet points. Philosophical discourse, psychological insights, mystical and occult studies. I like this one. It's always interested me, but I haven't really followed through with my interests as much as I maybe should have. Some of it because of stigma and because I was maybe ridiculed a bit for doing so in the past, and that stuck with me, but that's not a good reason. Teleological and metaphysical inquiries. Is that like what is that? Is this kind of like remote viewing? Is what that sounds like to me? Or reflect upon the purpose of fundamental nature of existence. That's not what that is at all. Okay, I was wrong. Well, that is the ultimate stoner pondering, isn't it? To reflect upon the purpose and fundamental nature of existence. Sociological analysis and concept networking foster connections between different realms of thought to uncover novel insights. Yeah, critical thinking is, I don't know, is that still taught? That was like a subject when I was in, I don't know what grade it was, but it was a subject in school. That's the first time I've heard that word. But I tell you what, I'm going to throw some lore on it because, as we just discussed, I have been busy for a couple of months and I haven't added a bunch of lore. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add, I'll go in 20% on this because I think that as it gets pushed up in the list, other people will throw in, which will bring my share down to a more reasonable level. I usually aim for about 6%. I don't like getting into the double digits because I don't like to own too much of something. But let's just start with adding zeros and see. So let's see, 0.03%. So if you go in and if you want to aim for a certain percentage, this will dynamically update as you add zeros. So 21%. How much does it take? 100,000 lore to get 21%. So that's where I'm going to put my vote. A little bit less than a quarter. And I like the number 21 anyway. So now it has 5 unique voters. Thanks for pointing that out. I wonder how we could spread the word on that to people who really just want, like, my preferred way to use Den would be to get people in. Like, even if you just wanted to use this one layer and give a shit about Den, you just wanted to have a room to talk about this topic, that's the perfect kind of person to come in and get in on this. Hey, I think I Am for I Am's going to join us for a minute here. Good timing too, because I just wrapped up talking about the LCP. What's up, my dude?
Hey, I brought 2 friends with me.
I see that.
Gravity Crab here?
No, he's not. He's not.
Oh.
No, he had a bad day. So he's gonna chill out. Yeah, like one of my coworkers used to say, sometimes you're the bug and sometimes you're the windshield. I think today he was the bug.
I gotcha. Yeah, I thought this would maybe stir up some trouble or some conversation.
I love that just like a photo of somebody can make people like, those motherfuckers, whether it's those guys, whether it's like Trump or Biden or, somebody who's like just a picture of somebody, Hitler, can stir up somebody, can just like elicit people's the reactions and stuff.
So I figured these folks would help support my hypothesis that the Khufu pyramid was built in 9 months with the help of aliens and use of rubble.
You would need the aliens. What's up with the rubble, though? What's the theory on rubble?
Since you asked,
yeah. What are the Khufu? What did you say? The Khufu?
Yeah, the Great Pyramid of Khufu, whatever. Well, anyway, the idea here is that the entire pyramid is not chiseled, nice, sharp hand carved blocks, but there's an actual inner wall, and it's kind of segmented, and therefore they could fill those segment parts with rubble rather than the whole pyramid being of blocks.
Ah, interesting.
Thus, being able to build it in a much faster time frame.
Where's Khufu?
I think it's the yeah. Is that one Khufu? I don't remember.
It's what it's labeled as.
It's the tallest one, right?
It's one of the Giza pyramids?
Yes, it's one of the Giza pyramids.
Okay.
And that
concept, so they build a form like concrete. They build out a form and they dump it with rubble, and then they use that to build on.
Yeah, and so it's like a platform or something, and they just keep adding to it or something to that effect. That was the concept that this guy had, and
probably easier to carry like some rubble than the big ass stones, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
I've never been in there though. I don't know.
And the other idea along with that,
is there rubble though? Is there rubble in there? I thought they were big blocks.
That's what he was showing. He was showing when you walked in, when you're into the pyramid for the first time and you're walking, everyone's looking down and looking at the walls, but nobody's actually looking straight up. And straight up, you can tell it's basically rubble sealed with the Egyptian semen of the day. And then now that there are tours that go in there, they've shored it up even more so, but it's not a bunch of cut stones. So the ceiling is rugged and rough, and then you'll come across another section that's more smooth as you're going down the tunnel, right? And then it's rough again, and that's because there's a cross section of walls that they're filling, or compartments that they fill up with rubble. It's pretty fascinating concept or idea.
It's an interesting one, yeah.
Yeah, I never heard it.
I can find a good photo.
Yeah,
because I don't know. I've always thought this is how I always imagined it. These sort of cut stones kind of thing.
Yeah, that's also what's called the Grand Gallery, I believe. But there's other sections that the ceiling is actually really rugged and rough.
Well, like I said, that's how I always imagined it, but I've never been there, so I just imagine it how I've sort of learned it. It's not like I know for sure. Unusual interior view. It's a different pyramid.
Yeah.
And so, where do the aliens come in?
From my guy on my right shoulder.
Because where do you get rubble except from space, man?
Well, the guy's concept, this one I was listening to, think about it. It's easy to get rubble all around you, right? And then think as they're chiseling the blocks, they're creating rubble.
Yeah. Got to do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we used to always do whenever we were pouring. That's not true. Sometimes you will see with concrete, you throw in just rubble, you throw in rocks, you throw in blocks, you throw in broken cinder blocks just to fill up the space, because then it takes less material, less of the good stuff if you fill it with junk, and the end result is the same anyway.
Right. So let me see if I can find this one concept here the guy talks about. Well, anyway,
this is supposed to be a rubble-filled shaft.
There's a shaft there in rubble, but what
if they filled it with rubble in the same way that people will fill in Like, what if the rubble was filled in just basically to keep people out? Where they're like, okay, we're gone. We're going to leave the pyramids. Fill it with rubble so nobody else can get in there and use it.
Right.
Fill the shafts. Fill all the entrances.
Because that would be even harder, right? It would be hard. I don't know. I guess the blocks.
I think it would be harder because you'd be in a hurry at that point.
Yeah.
Have to do it quick.
Great Pyramid. I'm trying to find the video now. And now maybe I watched it on Odyssey. Yeah, I can't find it.
I'm going to type in, I love the word Khufu.
I know.
Khufu rubble. Who was the pharaoh Khufu? Oh, is it named after the pharaoh? That makes sense.
Yeah.
Wubble bubble. That's a lot of rubble wubble bubble.
And I didn't do my homework because I was going to have that link and plug it into the Den conversation. Oh, I just found it. How to build a Great Pyramid in 9 months.
What's it on?
It's on YouTube.
All right.
I gotta make sure I don't push play here, mess up our thing. But the guy takes a pictures of some internals of the pyramid. Like I said, I'll see if I can find it.
How to build the Great Pyramid in 9 months, not aliens. Well, if it's not aliens, I don't want to watch it.
Yeah, no, I know. No kidding. That's not going to get confused, right? Oh, shoot. Oh, but anyway, now.
I'm going to let it roll. Let's see. So there's ads, nice little intro. Let's skip past the why. Because aliens, obviously, that's why. No. All right, so we have a pyramid.
Oh man, I'm wondering if this wasn't. This has to have been it because it was one of those I was in the car listening to. I didn't get to see the pictures, except for that one where he was in there.
Hey guys.
Hey, we're looking at not aliens. We're looking at some not aliens.
Yeah, we love aliens.
Oh, here we go. This
looking
at this kind of thing right here.
Yeah, exactly. That's rubble inside. See, that's not pure blocks.
Gotcha. So, facade of block, nice, shaped, flat, even, but supported by and filled in with just whatever they could shove in there.
Right.
Interesting.
And
looks like somebody took a bite out of crime.
And then
remember the crime dog, whatever his name was. His name
McGruff.
McGruff.
Yes,
McGruff,
that's
yeah.
right. Simple.
McGruff took a bite out of that pyramid, man.
Can I just call you Cerebral?
Yeah, my dad calls me Cerebral.
Oh, well,
your dad calls you Cerebral? Man. That's legit.
Fits. That's legit.
Yeah, it's because I give him a lot of headaches.
Good for you, man. How you been?
It's been pretty busy. I've been just focusing on work outside of content creation, and then just getting my accounts pretty much up to speed with everything that's happening with the shift, like Twitter moving to X, and then Threads coming out, and keeping up with just meta in general. There's been a lot of release for AI in the last 4 months. It's just exploded, and a lot of people have simmered down on taking that information in, but they're sleeping on just how rapidly it's changing. There was a report that came out recently that said that, ChatGPT is on the decline. They're not getting as many visits to the website. But when you look at those statistics, those high number website visits were only lasting 6-7 minutes and stuff like that at most, right? So just because the amount of people interacting with the website has decreased, it doesn't necessarily mean that the quality of input and output information has decreased. And it's just that the novelty of it has kind of washed away in a sense.
That's natural. You see that every time. Anytime there's anything new, you get at least a bunch. You get, let's say, you get 10% of people that stick around, maybe, right? You get a whole bunch of people that check it out. Like, what is this new thing? And it's for some people and it's not for others. But that's not uncommon. There's always a massive influx, especially when there's hype, like Threads. Like, oh my God, Threads is going to take over what Elon was trying to do with Twitter. And like,
I don't know. Elon's been talking about some really scary things online. I mean, kind of pushing towards the idea that a particular demographic of people are on purpose trying to lessen the value of X, financially speaking. And when people start talking about like who's controlling all the money and stuff like that, they're generally around a very particular group of people. So he's been kind of pushing some conspiracy theorists to the front page and stuff like that. And it's hard to tell if it's just like him slowly falling into this bad idea and like really running with it, or if he's on purpose creating a place where he knows is going to cause controversy. People are going to come back to the site just particularly to fight with him and stuff like that. Like just the whole idea, I'm going to get rid of the block option and then proceeds to block people, It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, are you being controversial on purpose, or are you losing your senses? We're just not exactly sure what's happening,
He is a little bit of a loose cannon. And I think that he pivots so rapidly too that like kind of from day to day, I'll put it this way, man. I wouldn't make any long-term plans based on what dude said initially he was going to do, right? Speaking of,
I don't trust it.
I should have sent this to myself so I could show it. But so, Starlink, another one of Elon's endeavors. So Starlink, I was like on the ball. As soon as they opened up for beta, I was like, give me a satellite. Let's go. Oh, cool. And so I paid for a satellite. And the deal was, back then at least, I don't know if there's a subscription for it now. Probably is a monthly like service fee. But back then, it was like $250 for the equipment. And once you had it, you're online. It was like a one-time purchase. And you're like, there you go. You got the equipment. You can be online. So I bought that shit. And it never showed up. And then it continued to never show up. And then it never showed up some more. And this was 2 years ago almost. This was like early Starlink when it was like you had to wait for beta access. Maybe it was a year and a half ago. It was a year and a half or 2 years ago. Anyway, literally last week, right? I'm in the middle of, so first of all, you got to geographically lock yourself in. So the satellite dish only works where you registered it in this like cell. And if you move it, you got to like re-register it and all that stuff. So I'm selling my house and moving. I'm not there anymore, right? I'm still technically there, but I'm in the middle of selling my house. I'm not going to be there. Fucking Starlink shows up last week. After almost 2 years, a box comes in the mail. Starlink, here's your Starlink. And I was like, what? Now it shows up? Now I gotta even figure out what my account is. I don't remember. I had written it off, that kind of thing. Anyway, I got my Starlink. So we'll see.
Actually, it's so funny. Sometimes I wonder what can people do with all those like dish TV satellites that are just sitting on top of their roof from like 20 years ago.
You can do. You'd be surprised.
Giant ones in backyards sometimes.
I want one. I want one so bad. I don't have room for it, but I really want one. So here's the thing: is the dish ones. For example, something you can do with it. I was living in how do I say this without making me like sound bad? I didn't pay my bills a lot at a certain point in my life, and so one of those bills was the internet, and so I wanted to have the internet, but I didn't want to pay for it. So what I did was there was like 2 blocks away, there was a buddy of mine who was like, you can use my Wi-Fi, but like if you can get, like you come over and use my Wi-Fi on the porch or something. So what I did though is I took a dish, a direct TV dish, and they're designed to point up the sky. But if you turn them upside down and angle them up, you can get a straight shot. And so what I did is I strapped a router to it, to like the arm that comes out, and it concentrates, instead of it being like omnidirectional, it concentrates it all to a point, which lets it shoot like a lot further. And then I went to the other end to his house and was like, hey, can I put this upside down dish in your yard? He was like, sure, whatever, dude. So I did one on his end too, and I was able to get them aimed at each other just right. And I connected wirelessly the Wi-Fi from his house to my house, and then I daisy chained another router so I could have regular Wi-Fi, and I had the internet again. So it's like stealing cable, but you just find an open Wi-Fi hotspot that might be 2 blocks down at McDonald's or something. Or if you're on a hill, maybe even further. I don't know, but that's what you can use it for. You can steal Wi-Fi.
I do think about that a lot. I mean, when you look at places like China or Japan, and sometimes you see photos of like these huge buildings, and all you see is just all these satellite dishes on every single balcony, just hanging out and stuff like that. And I'm like, how do we repurpose that? Like, first of all, that's a lot of material, and like, why does every single setup need its own satellite? I was always so confused about that.
Sure.
Have you seen the ones that there'll be one dish, but there'll be like 5 or 4 or 3 arms on it, all the same one? That's what you do, is you put more sensors. Each one of those has to be its own though, like, because if you're flipping channels, you got to have your own little thing, like your own little cable box.
So what does the satellite act as kind of like the main hub for like your personal TV? Instead of like being able to divide it by a network for everybody's TV inside the house?
Well, the actual satellite up in space, it broadcasts all channels at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then what the receiver, the satellite dish on your end, picks that up. And then your receiver, the actual little element on the arm,
inside the house,
goes to a box, which filters the different frequencies to pull out different channels, different things, right? And so I guess now that I think about it, if it was just one way, if you were just receiving it, you could just use one and split it off, just like cable TV.
Right.
But it must be the two-way thing. It must be like when you want to buy on demand or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that makes sense. So that way, like your particular account and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, but there's got to be a better way. You can multiplex. There's got to be a better way.
I thought it was for advertising. At that point, releasing that many satellites, like I'm like, you got to be advertising. Literally.
Our name is everywhere. It's all over the wall.
Well, Dish Network, AT&T's network, whatever they are, it is encrypted when they're beaming it back down. It's encrypted, so the box is decrypting it, and then it's validating your subscription to be able to present those channels to you and which channels you paid for, because the dish is receiving everything. But what they told me was one of the installers on Dish told me that it can very simplify. I think it's on a cellular network, kind of real small, simple ones and zeros. It tracks what you're watching, so that they can feed that and sell it. And they'll say, like,
that's true. That's very true.
This household watches a lot of football, and this household watches a lot of PBS, or how many hours on PBS versus how many hours on football, or whatever. And then
I forget what that network is called, but it's where you get these TV ratings and stuff from.
Nielsen's is one of them.
Nielsen's one of them. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
the Nielsen rating. Yeah.
But I think in the beginning they didn't do that because there wasn't enough cellular network, and it was
didn't have the tech.
It was only one way. Is from space to your TV. That was it. Yeah. There was no transmission data.
And then you had people like me. Like, I used to be a much bigger pirate than I am today. But like, I remember when I was in San Diego, I ordered basic cable. I wasn't going to pay for like all the channels and stuff, right? But the dude comes out to install the cable, and I'm just like talking to him, and I follow him out there, and I'm watching him work, and like I'm also like watching him work. Like, what are you doing, and how is it hooked up? You know? So I'm talking to him, asking questions. He's like, all they do back then is they put on a filter on the wire that connects to your house. Like I was in an apartment building, so there's a whole bunch of different where like a hub where each port went to a different apartment. And so what he did was he took the main cable, just one cable line that came in, and it split off to everyone's individual spot. And then you put on a certain filter between there and the actual like address, and it filters out what you're not paying for. And so I saw how that worked. I was like, all right. So I came back at night, of course, at like 2 a.m. night ops, and it was in this utility closet, but it had a dirt floor. This is part of what I saw when I was in there with him. And I fucking dug underneath like a cartoon character escaping from jail. Underneath this like utility like shed outside. And I shimmied. I was a lot thinner back then too, because I was like in the military, so I worked out. And so I shimmied underneath there with some tools, and I cut that fucking filter off, and I reconnected the cable in, and I plugged it in. And after all that, you know what I watched when I came home from work? Golden Girls and The Nanny.
Oh no! So you
could
get
all that for Golden Girls.
Oh my God.
I could get everything, but for whatever reason, I came home and I was like, I'm gonna watch Golden Girls, and I'm gonna watch Fran. I'm just like Fran Dresser and fucking
great picks.
But I did it just because I could, you know, kind of thing.
That's funny. Wow.
But that's why you got to encrypt it, because you get people that do that.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm just saying, like, I remember growing up in the 90s and the early 2000s, and I remember growing up in a city when one of your neighbors didn't have cable, or their phone didn't work anymore, or electricity was out. Somebody would go climb the pole, you know, and then they would re-hook up the telephone, I guess, plugins that were up the pole. And like you give them like $5-10, and then everybody in the neighborhood had cable and stuff like that. And it just always kind of like was one of those things where it's like we hold things back from people just because we can, and then we decide that we're going to force them to pay a particular amount about things. It's just like, I don't know, the flow of information is with this new open source, and the fact that people want to share their knowledge and they want to share their ideas. Right now we're in the midst of this big national crisis of, are artists safe, are movies safe because of AI generation and stuff like that. And it's like, when we get to the point where enough people say that they on purpose want to offer up their information willingly, as long as there's a system in place that when it takes that information, is not going to use it against them to harm them or to try and mentally damage them or manipulate them in any way, because there's going to be people who want to know the parameters of what their body's going through, if they're sick, if they have all this other stuff going on, but they're not going to want to have sensors inside of them that other people can just access whenever they want. It can just download that information, you know? So
yeah, on the surface, it's a great idea. Hook all the shit up to me, and then we have the technology now to interpret that and give me real-time readouts of how sick am I getting. Should I be, asking my doctor about a particular thing because of this, statistical data that you're seeing? The scary part is what's done with the data.
Right. I think though, we might do a half step to a better medicine, shall we say. The half step is probably inserting sensors in our bodies, right? But eventually, I would like to think that we could evolve to where it would be like Star Trek. You lay on the bed and he's got the tricorder, and he's going over your body, and he can diagnose you instantly what's going on. I think that is a better way.
I think part of even just that though. See, a lot of people talk about that, but like I would assume, wouldn't you would still like, unless it's pure X-rays and they're using only light data to to get all of your information. I would assume that they would still need to insert a type of implant that would hold that information until you were scanned, and then it could be uploaded or something like that. Because you're going to want to know what happened to your body previously as well.
Oh, I see. Like the trending. Yeah.
Trending, true. Well, think of it like as medical science progresses and like imaging. You know, we went from a real crude X-ray to CT scans and now MRI scans, and now 3D MRI can watch the heartbeat and everything else. And imagine if it could then dial in and say, okay, well, the heart has got this damage and this here and there, and could determine when that damage occurred. Maybe because of scarring, it could age it, just like we might age a fossil or something.
Right. Carbon dating and stuff like that.
Because of like this, you have this pattern of this amount of scarring. You can then say, oh, it would have taken this long for that to form, so we know what happened at this point. But no, like Cerebral's right about the trending data being able to have like a history that you can see like a time frame and that kind of thing, because that's super useful. Where like just a piece of data by itself or a one-time scan, like you might see something's up, but without seeing a pattern, because things fluctuate. Inflammation goes up and down over time. You see patterns in blood pressure, your level of stress, whatever.
So cool.
But I'm thinking go ahead.
I was going to say, Cerebral, it is so. I am honored to be here with you and be able to see you interact with
We just got really lucky. We got really lucky.
Your postings over the past year and a half or whatever have been so amazing. So
thanks.
I
actually have been putting more stuff up on Medium, and I've been waiting to post it on Den. And I actually made a move earlier. I don't know if you've been on Den today or in the last few days. I actually submitted an LCP. I do know that we already have a philosophy layer and everything like that, but I figured that could be a much more general philosophy, and the layer that I'm creating on purpose is going to be heavily curated. So if you look in the random layer, there was 2 posts that went up today that I thought would be ideal for what I was going for my layer. So what I did was I just commented on their post. I told them that I put the energy up. I told them that I really appreciate the content and that I had proposed a layer, and I figured that this content, while it's nice to put stuff in the random layer, it would go really well in this specific layer. If they were interested in being a part of that, them sponsoring the layer is also them buying into a layer that would on purpose support them, So
I did see that today, actually, yeah.
So I wanted to try and start getting into this movement of really, I mean, at the end of the day, we can, since there's no rules at this point up until something new is established, we could do whatever we want inside of Den. I could put up a post tomorrow that says that I'll sell 144 points of energy on a post for 1 matter a day, and somebody could buy my energy for their posts, and they could get upvotes by that. I would be getting paid and they would have a supporter. Then their content would be pushed up inside of Den, more people would see it and interact with it. So there's so many ways that we could still use Den and create an economy that could be a lot healthier. But it's just the language hasn't really developed, and a lot of people are actually scared. I can tell that a lot of people are afraid to be that person to try something new in case it either gets rejected or gets banned. And a lot of people the internet has terrified people. It has created this trauma that we have to walk on eggshells, and to an extent you don't want to go around cussing out old ladies online for no reason. You don't want to go around harming people and stuff like that. But innovation has been stifled to such a degree that when you just think of a new idea or something that's not really new but can be applied to this, people are afraid to try it,
That's fascinating. So it would be another way to market your energy. That is
literally.
That's an interesting idea, because typically you think of energy as something that it's non-transferable, you can't sell it, that kind of thing. But actually you can do whatever you want. You can say, pay me and I'll spend it wherever you want me to spend it.
Right.
No, I can't transfer it to you, but you can direct me where to put it, and it's the
Right.
same thing, you know, that you're going to use it for. That's a good idea. I don't
I mean,
know
when
if
you
it breaks
start getting
anything,
like,
but it's a good idea.
I mean, when we're not bots, we're real people, and we're
Yeah.
being hired, so we're agents. There are jobs that you can have in real life where you're a do nothing person, and these do nothing people, you just hire them for 80, 90, $100, and they'll, if as long as you're paying, they'll go to dinner with you, they'll help you go to the shopping center, they'll have brief conversations with you. It's not like they're dating you or anything like that. I mean, they can pose as a date, but like,
Or they'll stand in front of your nightclub and make it look popular. There's a line.
Right.
Or they'll, you know,
Exactly.
whatever,
Exactly.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just saw a little quick excerpt on Japan. Japan has turned into this place because of there's so many women that have remained single, have and the country wants them to have children because of their birth rate is collapsing, but they're finding other ways. Like, you know what? Not necessarily from a from just a platonic relationship. Yeah, every once in a while I want to have dinner with somebody, but I don't want to be tied down. And they will pay someone to just have a conversation with them, have dinner with them, and talk about their cat or their dog or whatever, and their job, and be able to vent about, oh, this person at work did this and this and that, and you know, and they just want to be able to vent. It's pretty crazy.
That's a program that also has to do with the shut-ins inside the country. So part of it, I hate this idea that we have to get women pregnant. Like I've actually was watching a video by 2-Bit Da Vinci earlier, and I hated his language throughout the entire video. He's an awesome engineer, super intelligent person. But like when it came down to just how women were being represented in this aspect of like what's going on with the crisis for childbirth and stuff like that, there's this narrative that like, oh, well, women wanted to be free and women wanted an education, so now we can't have any kids and stuff like that, you know? And like, so that is like so disgusting.
You're blaming them for a situation. It's like,
absolutely.
Oh, well, here's what, you wanted this, here's what we get. Here's what happens when you get equality.
Right.
Here's what happens whenever women get treated like a regular person.
China.
I don't know who you're talking about, and I didn't see that, but I know what you're talking about, where you're like, people either put the blame on it, or sometimes I see, and I'm guilty of this sometimes too. It's less nefarious, thankfully, but whenever you, in your mind, you think, oh, you have to do this to achieve that, and what you really want to be arguing for is achieving that. But what you end up arguing for is the thing that you assume you need to get to that.
Right.
So like, if you need more children, if you need more babies, like I'm a pretty flexible dude, and I think that eventually we'll be able to just make babies. Like we're
not in the game to make babies though. That's what the false premise is. They
say like, if that's your point,
that's not what they want.
If that's your point, if you think we need more children in society, maybe we invent a way to make children in society. This is not a traditional like, okay, make some people feel funny.
I'm there with you. I'm there with you.
Not the family unit, whatever. But literally, you could probably figure out a way to like make children if that's what you need. You don't have to put it on like the woman. Like, yeah, that's the way we've made children up until now. But you can't blame women because, like, oh, we've always done it this way, so it's their fault.
Shoot, there's wombs for rent.
We do need kids. We do need younger people because the way the society, at least right now, because it's very lopsided right now. We're getting an elderly population issue where there isn't this underlying foundation of younger working support labor to hold up.
There it is. That's what they want. That's what they want.
To hold, and this is how it's shaped, you know. But that's what we use is this form of like we need the labor is what it is. It really is we need the labor, whether it's from immigrants, whether it's from new kids, whether it's from refugees. We need the younger workforce, the labor. Or we could have AI robots too. What we really need, really, and it's I don't know how else to put it, but everything is sort of based on slave labor to some degree.
Right.
We
Exactly.
are being farmed.
Whether
We are
you
being
are
farmed.
whether you are whether you are making a particular demographic 100% slaves, or whether you're making everybody 20% slaves, but
Right.
still you're depending on some form of like everybody gets taxed, everybody gets to share the burden and be a little bit of a slave instead of just one demographic being a lot of bit of a slave. You're still functionally depending on that labor of human like labor kind of thing. So the way that we're structured right now, not saying we have to be structured this way, but the way that we're structured in society right now, we're losing that supporting young able-bodied labor force. And so we either need to replace that with new people, younger people, or we need to replace that with really smart AI robots that can do the same thing, or we need to replace that with ingenuity and efficiencies where we don't need as much of a workforce or something. But anyway, there's what I think about that.
China, inflicted its own problem with its demographic problem with the single child, and then people only wanted males, so there weren't enough females. So now China has a severe problem in the years to come. As a matter of fact, we're going to see their population deteriorate, and they'll be like Japan and like Europe. Without the immigration, that Europe would be dying. It doesn't have the same with the U.S. But there's another factor here that you can split off. So now, I just mentioned more of a centralized government planning or encouraging the lack of childbirth, right? Well, let's look at another factor, which I'm such an economic analytical person. Bear with me, but when it only took like let's say the milkman that used to deliver milk at the front door of people's homes that ordered it, right? That person could support a family of 5 or 6 kids, and the mother could stay home with the children. And now, keeping up with the Joneses, shall we speak, or I want the new car, a debt-based economy, incredible amounts of inflation to devaluate your home currency has created the need for a 2-parent income. And more, it's created a point where I used to say, and people used to think I was crazy, this was in the late 80s, I used to say that, eventually maybe the 3-parent income could become the norm. In other words, who cares if it's 3 females, 3 males, whatever, or a combination thereof? It will require more cohabitation, or we're going to stop sending grandma and grandpa to the old folks' home, and we're going to start bringing them back into our home. And like a lot of other traditional values might carry on. So, and it won't change society as much. So an economic point of, believe it or not, the deflation of a currency, shall we say in America, the deflation of the dollar has precipitated the actual requirement of a dual parent income.
What's funny? That reminds me of a conversation I had with my wife. I had a little going away party whenever I started making my big move and stuff not too long ago, and it was like a little pool party at my brother's house, and he's got a cool spot with a pool and a lake, which is awesome. And we're hanging out by the pool, and this guy, my wife's talking to this guy, and he's talking about his girlfriends, plural. And she came back and she was telling me about it, and she was like, "Yeah, he was saying he's in a he didn't call it polygamy, he called it
it's a
polyamorous. Yeah,
yes.
He's a polyamorous relationship." And she was like, "I've never talked to somebody who was in a polyamorous relationship and stuff like that." And I was saying, like, really, that could actually be, think about economically, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're truly, let's say you really are in a let's say there's 3 people, let's say there's 5 people, who cares? But you really do, like, each person literally loves each other, and it's great, and it's a fantastic meaningful, loving relationship. Number one, what's wrong with that? But that's not what I'm getting at. But economically, that's got to be awesome. You remember,
Yes.
was it King of the Hill? They had the neighbors, the Dink family. It was
Never
like the
watched.
Asian family next door. They had like the big boat and plenty of money and stuff like that. It was either King of the Hill or it was like, I think it was. Anyway, they were called the Dinks, and it stood for dual income, no kids, DINK.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that sort of concept where they had two full-time working people and they didn't have kids. And they had, economically, they were like the rich neighbors kind of thing.
Right.
So 2 points. One, we've pushed people into kind of wanting that because they see, a lot of times people see kids as a burden that they either have to, like, they've got to sacrifice what they want to do to be able to support them, or the money is devalued to the point where, like, you need. I lost my train of thought there. So one of them was like the kid situation, but the other point I was going to make is, if the Dink family concept is awesome, imagine like triple income, quadruple income, all in one household. Dude, you'd be balling. That'd be fucking awesome. You have no.
I mean,
I think the cost of childcare is expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I just looked up. You know how much it costs as of May 3rd to raise a child in the U.S. according to Investopedia? $310,000 to age 17. To age 17, that doesn't count that big hit. Once they
maybe
come
that's
back
not that
home or whatever.
Maybe that's how you comfortably have kids. You have three parents. One of them does stay home and takes care of the family. Two of them work, and that's your new family unit.
That's what I used to say in the late 80s, and people thought I was crazy. Not that I was looking for that type of relationship or anything. I just said that is going to be the natural progression of an economy that is debt-based and has a high inflation rate.
Well, that's really intuitive.
And it's harder to hold on to traditional values and still have all those nice toys that you want,
I don't see you're saying about the toys and stuff like that, but I mean, people can't afford to get groceries. People can't afford their rent. So it's not even about people wanting nice things. I mean, okay, your friend makes clothes. You should be able to buy the clothes your friends makes, and people can't, I mean, when we really look at the history of relationships, marriage, and economy as three different things, but at the end of the day, everything was very tied together. Like, the woman or the girl was married off to a husband by a family for resources, usually a goat or a cow, some land or something like that. And later, of course, you were talking about how, like, the more American style thing was where you had the husband who went off to work and you had the wife who raised the kids and stuff. But at the end of the day, people have thought that this is the most ideal way when we've lived in tribal communities forever. So
yes.
In these, like, we have a lot of like Indian neighborhoods in Delaware where I'm at, and like when you go to their neighborhoods, there's so many of them. They're all outside. They're all hanging out with their kids. They're all talking to each other and stuff like that. Our sense of community. Dave, you said distant. You were like, yeah, we're not going to send our parents to the older folks home anymore and stuff like that. That was very American culture. That's not normal. That's very strange of us to abandon or move away from our family instead of creating a more solid unit for each other. It was in America. It's very I
somewhere and say, okay, I'm going to pay someone to take care of them, and so I can continue doing my thing. Yeah.
Well, it also became a thing where, the grandparent was saying, oh, I don't want to be a burden on you.
But they shouldn't be, and unfortunately, we've created that kind of society where old people do feel like a burden because their place has been removed. Old people used to be a spiritual pillar, and that was fine during the times where people had to orally pass down stories. But now we have the internet, and we know that old people are full of crap and they don't really know half the stuff that they're talking about. And for generations, they've been lying to people because they were lied to first, So we're in this shift, this paradigm shift of what our society could look like and what we could be. I was polyamorous as early as high school. I already knew that there was no possible way for just a 2-family income to support however many kids, and we still live in this idea where people who are having kids should work. That's the problem. That's the insanity right there. Why are we not allowing people who want to have children, who want to have regular, happy families to do that, and then we pay them? Because there are more people nowadays that would rather live by themselves, live with their friends, and never have children. And that should be okay because humanity needs to heal. We have been so traumatized, lied to, and indoctrinated for so many generations. And there's so many people who on purpose want to be removed from their parents because not that they necessarily deeply hate them, but they have a sense of resentment for the world that you told me was not true. The traditions and the ideas were not what you said. And I don't know how to be, as your child, the one to tell you the truth and break you out of that, because I've tried to have these conversations with you and you don't listen. So at least here in America, you see a huge division between the older generation and the younger generation, to the point where we're segregated by things like boomers and millennials. Like, do you see how insane that is? It's not like these should be other people. You see how othered we've become from each other? That is strange. That's the sickness. That is the conspiracy, so that we're separated, the division, the nonsense.
Right. I agree. And if you follow this again, following the economy, I think about it when there was like, I'm going with that example of the milkman that delivered the milk, every day. It was in every neighborhood just about, right? After we grew away from the farm, but that person could support a large family very comfortably. But what happened over time, then that person wasn't making enough money, so he had to put on more overtime, maybe take on a second job, do more moonlighting, something like that. Next thing you know, it progresses even further. The wife now is going to do a little extra income, extra time. And then next thing you know is we have both parents working full time. Who's raising the children? And just a different change in society, but that becomes the norm now. So I'm pinpointing it to inflation and the devaluation of a currency as part of that problem, which really goes back to a debt-based economy. So I've been working on this for a few years, but a solution might be if you had a dollar that actually increased in value over time because a little bit of it was burnt every day, kind of like nice. A cryptocurrency. It was burnt every day. Now, economists call that a cash-based system, but I'm not calling it that, but that's kind of the closest analogy to it. So imagine if every transaction actually burnt, a tenth of a penny or something like that. So how Bitcoin is set at, whatever, 21 million coin, right? And that's it. That's all there will ever be. Well, imagine if the US dollar was saying, okay, as of January 1st, we're stopped printing, and now we're going to start reversing how many there are, or something to that effect.
You could do that. You could start burning on transactions. This is what Ethereum has done, right? Mm-hmm. Where every transaction on Ethereum, it burns a little bit. Or you could also, this is kind of like the shitty way to do it, but it's the way we do it. You can have someone like the IMF manipulate other countries into using the dollar so that you increase the demand on it. Or you have a bunch of industry. You have a big industry boom, so there's more demand for the dollar. That has a similar effect of burning it because now you're spreading it thinner. More people are wanting it and things like that. You talked about. I just wanted to, before I forget about it.
Yeah.
There was a transaction on Bitcoin this past week where somebody filled in the fields wrong. Instead of sending 20 Bitcoin, and paying a small fee for the network fee. They paid a 20 Bitcoin fee to miners and sent a small amount of Bitcoin. They reversed the two fields. It's a big fucking oopsie. But there was a 20 Bitcoin transaction fee process in a block, which I thought was...
Did it take 3 blocks to process it?
No, actually, the mining pool held it, and they said if nobody claims it within 24 hours, we're going to pay it out to miners, which I thought was ironic because you have this decentralized network, right?
Wow.
But then you have the mining pool is going to hold the fee. Like a single entity is going to hold the fee and not process it?
See, there's some money laundering that can happen that way too, and you've probably heard stories about that. So, but
well,
anyway,
you guys are talking about
if the currency is increasing in value, that changes the social economic system that we're not accustomed to right now.
Well, it disincentivizes spending and it incentivizes savings.
What's that?
You know, it breaks things the way that they are right now, because then you have the incentive to save the money, to put it in your sock drawer, to hide it under your mattress, to keep it in the bank, and you don't have the incentive to spend it into the economy to stimulate whatever whatever part of the economy, whether it be more Twitch streamers or new houses or the auto industry or fuel or whatever.
And think about it, a government agency could say, you know what, we're not going to spend all of our money that's been allocated to us by September 30th. What we're going to do is we're going to hold some of that back because it's going to be worth more next year, and our budget next year is going to actually be larger.
Well, and the opposite thing happens right now, because like if you hold on to it, you're losing money. It's like you better spend it. You better spend that money. You better get a house. You better get a car. You better get new tools for your occupation, so that then you at least have something tangible that isn't going, that you'll be able to
I think that moving into this more virtual Web3 digital space that we're going towards, using things like tokenomics and blockchain all together, if we can create a centralized coin and then allow everyone to have their own individual coin at birth, such as their social security number, something to that equivalency that gains value per day, and as you spend it up against the main coin, your coins are burned, and then it gains value through that. So, as earlier, I Am was talking about again how the husband was out at work and the woman was at home, usually with the kids and stuff like that. But a lot of what humanity likes to pass over is all the unpaid wages women have put forth since forever, which include the farming, which include creating clothes, which include blankets, which include all decorating, flower arrangement, herbs. Women have literally been doing just as much work at home, not just homemaking, right? Because they have to make the olive oil, make the butter, all the luxuries of the time, right? The cakes and stuff like that. I mean, these are things that we would pay people for nowadays, right? Because we understand that it's hard work and it's respectable. So all this time, we've had this idea that it was only the man creating value for the home, when there is an entire counterpart creating just as much, if not more value, because that man needs a sense of peace. He needs to be able to eat. He needs to be able to have his kids or his dreams or his wishes fulfilled or whatever, right?
Yeah, so it really is a team. My wife and I talk about that too, where like it really is a situation where even if it is, so like that situation where the man's paying the bills and the woman's staying at home, that kind of thing, the man couldn't be doing what he was doing and focusing on paying the bills if there wasn't this infrastructure support at home. All of this
psychology,
all this
emotional health.
Yeah. I was going to say something related to that, but I forgot about it. What was it?
Yeah.
I forgot. It was along the same lines, but I forgot it. I lost it.
Valid point, Cerebral.
I just want humanity to kind of step away from this idea, because earlier we were talking about Japan and China. Go ahead, so you don't forget.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, one of the things that we don't prioritize, we have we talk about the problems with education and the problems with like the family unit or the birth rate or in things that we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes or so, but we don't focus, like we defund education, and we don't have a social safety net for people to be able to be able to take the chances with take a chance to have a family. Well, what can you fall back on if it doesn't work out? You have fewer people wanting to do that. You have the education thing bothers me because this is like, it's a national security issue, really. Like, you have the people that are going to be leading this nation in the future, that are going to be responsible for everything, and we're shitting all over them and not supporting their growth, even psychologically or in the education system or with food, right? Even if you're like, okay, well, we have a food stamps program, sure, but that typically buys shitty food a lot of times, right? Which,
well, if your grocery stores only have shitty food, you can only buy shitty food with your food stamps.
Food deserts. Food deserts
exactly.
is a good example.
I don't think there's enough focus on that as a priority, as having this security of basic. And I'm not even a socialist, but I completely believe that we should have more of a focus on providing a basic social safety net for people to be able to stand, like a foundational starting point, to where you're at least, even if it's shitty healthcare, even if it's not the best, to have something that you can fall back on as a foundation, as a stepping stone.
Think about back in the day when the doctor would have his doctor's bag and he would make house visits. He or she would make house visits. It was inexpensive.
That'd be great.
Hey doc, how can you come look at Johnny? He's got a fever.
You do that today, and you're like, "What are you, rich? What are you, a millionaire? You have your own doctor? What? He comes to your house?"
Yeah. And he would make house calls. That was just the norm. It was the normal thing back then, and you could afford it. And if you couldn't, you could say, I got an extra couple of dozen of eggs here because our egg, we got eggs coming out the ears. And the doc would say, sure, I'd be happy to. As a matter of fact, I know the Joneses down the street, they need eggs because they're a little hungry. And, they gave me bread and I got all this extra bread or whatever, something like that. And so the doctor was also, it was barter. It wasn't just money.
The eggs thing, man, that's something else that tripped me out. The whole egg shortage situation that happened. And you had in Gainesville, we have all these farmers markets where the farmers aren't allowed to sell their eggs. So you have an egg shortage, and you have farmers that have to label their eggs as pet food or not for human consumption, right? Pet feed only, to legally be allowed to sell it at the farmers market. And so there's all of these things, and you see it just on the surface.
All the money.
You, like, regardless of what the reasons are, right? Maybe there's, like, let's say there's good reasons for all of that. Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. But if you zoom out and you look at the absurdity of it, it's like, oh man, we need something as simple as, we need eggs so bad, there's a shortage. And oh look, we have all these eggs, and you're not allowed to, like, just put the fucking eggs in there, man. It'll fix it. You just can't.
I don't know. There's some really strange things going on in the country right now. They're talking about some of the states have legislation to allow animal products on the market that are deemed as inhumane in states of captivity. So right now, how our market works in some places is that you can't put food into the grocery stores if your animals were abused or if there was some kind of issue with them, stuff like that. It's not quality. But there's legislation somewhere talking about trying to get rid of it. Somebody just sent me a link earlier, so you gotta watch out. It's scary.
That's
right
the
Cerebral. Do you think
that I believe in that sort of, like, rules against cruelty makes sense. And this is where I was talking about.
I won't eat lamb. Like, I won't eat lamb.
Oh yeah. Like, this is where I start getting into, capitalism within reasonable boundaries kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, you can't sell children. Everybody can agree on, no, you don't sell children. That's terrible. We don't allow that in our country. right?
Listen, that's why logic is not there. It's not there. People are not going to agree with you.
That is a boundary on capitalism. You know, in certain company, I start talking about putting limits on capitalism. Like, what are you, a socialist? And I'm like, no. Like, there's already boundaries. I just
is
think
it
they're a little bit
capitalism
too
or is
loose.
it greed? Is it capitalism or is it greed? Is there a difference?
Well, I think capitalism's strength is that it is able to use greed as a force of productivity. That's kind of the point, I think, to be able to
capitalism is neutral.
greed,
it's
which
not do no harm or harm. It's neutral. It's like Bitcoin. It's the honey badger. It doesn't care. It doesn't have a feeling, an emotion, or anything. It's a system.
It's an unfeeling system.
Yes, but Cerebral, to the question I have for you, are we progressing or are we de-evolving? Is there hope, or should nihilist black-pilled people, they actually have it right?
So we are in this dialectical spin of both downward trajectory and upward. Right now, our physical health is deteriorating, and materialists believe that we are only our body. So if we look at reality from that perspective, we are devolving. Absolutely. We are sick. We are obese. People are ignorant, right? But if we look at the sense of awareness or consciousness, right, we see a large group of people who are still not self-aware. They are controlled by their archetypes. They want to be a dad, they want to be a student, they want to be a woman or a man, and then they follow whatever narrative allows them to become that living archetype, right? But we also see a huge explosion in the conscious community online, where people are facilitating these spaces where you can talk about conspiracies, or you can talk about how astrology controls your life, or how the demons are whispering in your ear and stuff like that. And there will be people who will feed into whatever ideas you have or may relate to you, right? So in that sense, you can see a lot of wild and crazy thinking. Absolutely. But there are still some people who are trying to bring logic and reason to the world and trying to understand things rationally within how the world actually operates, and not trying to do away with imaginary numbers because we don't like them, like how materialist science does, or not saying that some book has all the answers just because somebody said something and like I have a feeling in my heart, and whenever I'm in a group and we're all singing, like this feeling is so true, you know, like instead of allowing themselves to be emotionally manipulated or obsessed with particular ideas, they are taking a step back, they're washing the shackles from their mind, and they're slowly unlearning all the biases that they grew up with. They're unlearning everything that they thought that they knew was true, and they're looking at the world in a new lens. They're trying to figure out, like, is this real? And what does it mean to be real? How do we define that? How do we understand or come to a common sense so that we can have a conversation with each other? Because we're in this place right now where people think that the earth is flat. People think that we can't reach space. People think that the internal aspect of the earth has a whole nother world inside of it with dinosaurs and dragons and stuff like that. People will completely allow their imagination to run wild as long as we believe that you can just think whatever you want and it doesn't matter. Until we can get to the point where we realize your thoughts do matter, thinking is a skill that is not inherent. It is something that has to be developed on purpose, like critical thinking has to be developed, or compassion and empathy can slowly be developed in children when you show them videos of people being hurt and you're telling them, like, yeah, this is something that's pretty bad and that's something that you probably don't want to have happen to you, right? We can understand how these are states of mind, faculties that are complex that have to be put into place. And most people don't care. they are so senseless, they're so thoughtless, and they're so programmed by their archetypes, they allow themselves to just go to day to day. Well, since I'm a mom, there's this story that came out. I think she got arrested like last week or something like that. This Mormon mom who's been abusing her children on TikTok for like years and years and years, and people were calling her out. And because she's religious, nobody ever stepped in. Because she lives in a religious community and stuff like that, she was more likely to be protected. And now we're seeing
she
that
was giving parental advice.
She was giving advice, and she was literally telling people to use food as a weapon on her children. Her son escaped the house to a neighbor's with duct tape on his wrists and on his feet, and he was emaciated and he's begging for food. When the police arrived, there was another child on the scene, and when they started to investigate, they found the other children that were also emaciated. And then when she went to court, she tried to deflect and say that there was an older child in the scene that was sexually abusing the kids, and this is why. So it's like, at the end of the day, people are crazy and delusional. And we think that people 100 years ago weren't crazy and delusional when they were. They didn't know any better. They had a particular idea of how reality worked, and they ran with it. And I don't want to be like, oh yeah, that's great, because guess what? We had slavery and women couldn't vote, and we have all types of issues. And we don't have to continue to blame them for being ignorant, but we don't have to keep drinking the Kool-Aid and thinking that, oh, you know what? These traditions are awesome and let's not question them. Like, no, there are too many problems in the world that we have to face. And you have to be rational enough to know that even though you feel a particular way or you have a particular intuition, those things are not truth. That is the subjective aspect of reality, something that is particular to you. This is the hard problem of consciousness, which people have no idea about. They don't even realize that their existence is debated throughout academics. They have no concept of it because they are excluded from the conversation. The academies think that normal people are too stupid or too mystical to be able to have any input in it, and they want to get rid of all of these ideas. But I mean, we've been associating the soul and the mind together through philosophy for eons until more recent, where they were, I don't know, separated into two different things, and then the brain and the mind were considered the same thing, and the soul was supposed to be some whimsical religious idea or something like that. There's too many ideas that have been completely destroyed by nonsense.
Right.
I do think that what you like, a couple of things you said resonated with me, because one, people absolutely have been as crazy in the past as they are today. A lot of people today are just tuned out. You can call them NPCs, you can call them, stupid, you can call them whatever you want. But there's a lot of people that are just either not interested, or they're distracted, or they're left out of the conversation, or whatever, or they're just non-participants. They're just kind of autopilot kind of thing. But talking about people being as stupid then as they are now, or as crazy, or as maniacal, or as delusional then as they are now, the opposite is also true. Like, there's a spectrum of people. There's a spectrum of personalities. Absolutely. And I remember the first time that I read Voltaire, and I had this sort of just ignorant stigma of like old literature, not being able to relate to it. Like, oh, I'm not going to be able to relate to somebody who was, hundreds of years ago or something like that, right? But I'm reading Voltaire, who's not that old compared to a lot of literature, but dude's fucking hilarious. I'm reading his literature. I'm reading his writings, and I realize that I'm a huge fan of Voltaire as a comedian. The dude cracks me up, and that was the moment I realized, like I never thought that I can't relate to stand-up comedy in the 70s, but okay, here's somebody several centuries before my time that I'm like cracking up at. Like, this guy's intelligent, smart, witty, making some of the jokes that I kind of get it. It's just a human wit kind of thing. And so, yeah, as delusional as people are today, back then, but also as hilarious too, and as smart and as clever, and things like that.
Creative beautiful.
Yeah,
Like
all of
we're
that has
young,
existed
we're
for
rich
so
in
long,
nature.
and people had different tools and different limitations and different societal limitations too, like social structures, things that they couldn't do. And that brings me to my other point, where I think part of the confusion that we're seeing today is that a lot of people are actually starting to realize for the first time in a long time that we don't have to keep doing things the same way that we've been doing things just because that's the way we've been doing things.
Mhm.
And that's the only way we could do things in the past. We don't actually have to do that if we don't want to. If we are organized about it and we're able to like logic it out and come up with something different and better that works, we can do that if we want to. And nobody can tell us not to until they can, within limits.
Right,
See
right.
what I'm saying is like I wouldn't say it's an awakening. I would say it's a scary, confusing, broad set of options. Like it's like as inspiring as it is to realize you can go anywhere with this. We can drive humanity wherever we want from this point where we are right now.
Right.
There's so many directions we could go with it.
What's
That's both
stopping us, Dave?
inspiring and terrifying.
What's stopping us?
What's stopping us is the lack of organization and the plethora of differing ideas about which way we should go. Imagine there's one helm on the ship, which there's not. We can have a bunch of ships, but imagine there's one helm on the ships, and there's 8 billion pilots, and everybody's got different ideas on which way we should go, which path we should take.
I would argue it's the centralized systems that are preventing us to really blossom.
Well, that's why there's one helm. The centralized system is there's one ship and one helm, and we're all in it. And so the chaos around trying to control that centralized ship with everybody in it versus the idea that we can, even in the literal physical sense, we could branch off into the cosmos and just go fuck off on different planets. And, you guys can do that over here, you guys can do that over there. Kind of what we did on Earth, a little bit, but more broadly, hopefully without stomping out other civilizations.
Yeah, we could all terraform our own planets and have our own tribes grow and stuff like that, as long as we don't run into asymptotic burnout.
And maybe we can model it.
You're describing decentralization for me when I hear that.
Yes, and this is why I'm such a big fan of it. And maybe we can model that in something like a metaverse to see, okay, maybe there's not the resources to physically make the move until we know it'll work. Now, if we know it'll work because we've modeled it out and we've actually had a meta nation state where anybody could be a member of it no matter where they lived, and you're legally, you're a citizen of that metaverse, and you have your social structures there and you model it all out virtually, and then you're a little bit more confident that it can actually work. The governance works, the organization of the society works this way. Then maybe there'll be more willingness to put in the resources to build the big fucking rocket and go out there and do it somewhere. It's interesting. That's one way to do it. Anyway, there's a lot of ways to do it.
Cerebral, I think your answer, your long answer with all its nuances that I think I could read between the lines, I don't think there's anything I could refute or argue with in how you described the differences and where we're going and what's the ups and the downs. And I think I guess I get more fearful when I look at the youth today that are constantly on the phone and constantly hitting the dopamine and not doing anything to deter, asking some of those questions. What am I? What are my thoughts? What is consciousness? Beyond the idea of a game NPC, shall we say, or, it's encouraging when you start hearing a little twinkle that says, are we in a matrix? Because guess what? Now they're asking a question that could bring about some deep cognitive thinking and make some analysis or comparative, items, or look back at history, something to connect dots of today. But unfortunately, I see where they're, I'm on my phone, I'm on TikTok, I come home, I'm going to watch sports, I'm going to go watch other something, ridiculous out there. I'm going to watch a bunch of people get injured on YouTube and I'm going to laugh about it. I'm chipping away at my empathy. I'm going from this point to that point, and it's all about dopamine hits. And there's absolutely really very little true nuggets of new knowledge and information that's triggering thought, that's stimulating the brain, other than a dopamine hit, that is going to help that individual progress and level up. And that's the scary part. And those that are maybe in the upper echelons of academia, I would classify as part of that centralization is making the decisions for far too many people. Same are elected, representatives, if you want to call them elected. They're making far too many decisions for individuals based upon the money that's being lined in their pocket. And that's the part of the human frailty in the centralized systems that worries me. And as far as AI being a great tool that could carry us far beyond our wildest imagination right now to the good, is also a little worrisome, because there are far few many people at the top of these AI programs that are inserting their own biases that are going to help them gain more or obtain more or solidify
or paint their version of reality, or paint their picture of reality, so that it's almost like it could, if we're not careful, open the door to gaslighting on a global scale, where if you have, let's say, AI becomes the new Google search engine, which it seems like that's the direction it's going. Even today, I said I have a
Google's
GPT
already
Pro
implemented
account.
Something new. Yeah.
Well, I don't necessarily go to Google and look for information as much anymore. I go to my GPT AI chat bot, and I say, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. Can you tell me the difference between, recently it was like, can you tell me the difference between BACnet protocol and Modbus, and the differences between them and the way that their user interface and stuff. And it gave me a very great explanation of it, which was way quicker and more intelligible, and I was able to get exactly what I wanted so much quicker. And so I think that'll replace the search engine. That'll replace Google. And if that happens, then yeah, the same way that Google is able to put people in bubbles and they see the information that their particular pattern has told Google this is what they want to see, so let's show it to them.
Which one are you using?
I'm using GPT-4. OpenAI's GPT-4. Yeah.
And it's current?
It's not plugged into the internet. No, but it doesn't.
I use GPT 3.5, but I also use Bard, and I use Claude 2. I use 5 different ones. I haven't tried Bard yet.
Bard is plugged into the internet. That one's current.
Right.
I do like Bard. It's just a little bit more. It's more like if you was to ask so GPT is like if you were to ask a nice secretary to talk to you and have some questions, it's going to be very uniform. It's going to make a lot of sense. Yeah. Bard is kind of like you're asking your brother who definitely went to college, who's definitely a professional, but he's talking to you in a much more relaxed kind of narrative and a much more relaxed tone, He's just really chill with it. Claude is kind of hard to get to use because it's not in the same capacity as both of them, but it structures well. So you can put in a huge input and get it to structure.
I've read that the token size is a lot bigger.
It's insane. It's like 100,000 or something like that.
Yeah. You know what GPT-4 has done for me so far for $20 a month that I pay for it? It has written a letter of resignation for my wife. It has written lesson plans for a friend of mine who needed to learn Python. It has written a program with a GUI to do like specific like file transfer operations. Just spit out the code. Yeah, run this. And when I talk to it, like, oh, and also my new gig, I've sent out they wanted like a corporate email to say like, tell us a little bit about yourself. And they gave me an example of somebody else's like email. They're like, do something like this, but for you. So I copy and pasted that shit and said, hey, I started a new job and they want me to introduce myself, and they gave me this example as something that's good. Can you ask me questions that'll help you write me a version of this that's actually better and awesome? And it was like, yeah, sure. And it did, and it was too long. And I said, that's great. Can you make it a little bit shorter and more concise? Yeah, sure. And it did that. And you can refine that way and get exactly what you want. Right. Or like leave placeholders for this in case I want to use it later. You can talk to it like an intern and it'll produce. It's like an intern who has a degree in every subject, where you can say,
no, absolutely.
For me, produce that for me, that kind of thing. So anyway, yeah, AI is fantastic. It has the ability to like be like, you could think about it in a dystopian way where like maybe there's a back door and the puppet master is just going to, like, the moment the Elon's humanoid robots launch and you get an AI smushed into that, you get the software AI into a hardware robot, and then all of a sudden, who controls the robots? That could be terrifying, sure.
Right.
And that's part of what I mean before about like so many ways we could go with humanity. Right now is pivotal. And I wanted to say one more thing too, where this is a little bit of a white pill that y'all weird laid on me, another denizen. The same pool party where we were talking about polyamorous relationships, I was complaining about people being in bubbles, in like, their own little world, and they have people on their phones all the time, like you were talking about. I am, and people are like have their own little. They don't know what's real, and they have their own concept of reality, and they're just plugged in all the time, and they're not really engaged with the physical world and stuff. And I'm complaining about that, and he says, yeah, but that in itself is a bubble too. Like thinking that everyone's like that and everyone's in a little bubble and they don't understand that the shit on their phone's not real. That's a bubble too, because there's a lot of people who know that is exactly what's going on. There's plenty of people who do understand that this is the state of the world, and that, yeah, there's a bunch of opinions all over the place. And sure, you can reach into your pocket and ask your phone a question and get some kind of answer, but it doesn't mean anything. And so he reminded me that me complaining about people being in bubbles was itself a bubble that a lot of people are not in. They don't get down about it. Yeah. So yeah, I take that as that inspired me. So I'll call it a white pill. I was like, oh, all right. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Nice. We love inspirations.
I've been circling back to Alan Watts lately. Been listening to some of Alan Watts. Anyone know? You guys know?
No, not familiar.
Alan Watts?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Alan Watts in the community sometimes. A lot of people bring Alan up, and I think that I've shared a few videos on Instagram with Alan.
Yeah.
Who is he?
He's a philosopher, a professor. He's got a lot of Eastern ideas. He's
he talked about yin and yang and stuff like that. Yeah.
Pardon me?
He talked about yin and yang and stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of kind of Buddhist way of thinking, but he talks about it's all a game. And we're searching to find out what is real. He's different because I think he's intersecting, or he's tapping into an Eastern thought and a Western thought and trying to blend the two to answer some questions.
As you should.
Yeah.
I
And
mean, if we really look at like Eastern thinking, they're very intuitively guided, whereas Western thinking is very emotionally guided.
right,
Especially, you can see how the religions develop. You can see how their laws and their governance develop and stuff like that. So these are two functions of mind that really should be being used together and filtered through reason. But we'll
right,
talk about
right.
that later. But go ahead.
That's another conversation. The other person I was tapping into recently was Professor Ian Stevenson, I think is the last name, from Professor of Virginia, where he's gone all over the world to try to validate. He's since passed. He died, I don't know, 90s. I don't know, but he to validate reincarnation, and had
Oh, okay.
some
We've talked. Okay.
2,500. He traveled the world, visited numerous countries, and even within the U.S. and something like over 2,500 stories, firsthand accounts, and was
Of
able to
children being
validate.
able, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Of
validate over
children being able to do
1,200 of them. 1,200 over 1,200 he was able to validate. Most of them because of a traumatic, maybe violent death or something. Really strange.
Who is it? The
I
name?
think his Professor Ian Stevenson from Virginia. If you Google just reincarnation Professor of Virginia or something, Virginia State.
Okay, that's interesting.
You'll find. Yeah.
I've never like looked into that a whole lot. I've looked into some of the experiments that were done with like astral projection and sort of like, I don't know what you would call it, except some form of mind reading,
Right.
or some sort of connection between people, where they would validate that kind of thing by putting them in these chambers where there's no even electromagnetic, like there's no chance of any sort of anything that we understand about physics being able to get out of this room, but they still are able to, more than 50% success rate on the tests they were doing and stuff.
I mean, have you guys seen the CIA documents that were released?
I've seen some, yeah, and some of them were done. I'm up in North Carolina right now, and some of them were done up in Chapel Hill, UNC at Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
I haven't read near enough of them firsthand.
Mm-hmm. Okay. He used the scientific method in his trying to determine if reincarnation was true or not. I don't know what his final take was. I haven't gotten that far, but
depending on how you interpret it, we all come from stardust and end up that way.
Right. It was only children. You're right, Cerebral. It's only children, because as we get older, our minds become cloudy at previous.
Well, if it's the study that I think it is, again, some of the people in my Neogenian community have brought this up and we've talked about it. I think what was going on is that the children were able to recall specific locations, specific types of deaths, and then specific types of people. And what they were able to do was either track down the people, the location, or objects related to these situations and stuff like that. And they were able to pull like historical documents and everything like that. And it was just absolutely insane. But it's like, this is when things start to get strange, because they're talking about, these children don't come from these genetic lines and stuff like that. How is this possible? And then this is where materialism breaks down. How were these children able to get this kind of information if it's not genetic to them, and what is this life that they are that can pass from one instance to another and retain this information? What is information? You start asking all these questions, right? But these are things that most people would never even contemplate,
It's the oneness or connectedness that brings about a question for me, the big question mark. I'm agnostic, so I'm proud.
Have you ever heard of the law of one?
Yes.
So you know how I post about Morg on them sometimes. So Morg actually started doing videos on the law of one maybe like 2 months ago or something like that.
Right.
That was
the last one I watched.
Yeah, but so they kept So
one of the
I think
wonderful
we have like maybe like 8 or 9 of them done now. And as we were just getting deeper and deeper, it's just kind of one of those situations where the lady, she was supposed to be channeling this entity, right? Was it Ra? Yeah, she's channeling Ra. So Ra is at um opposing Yahweh in this scenario, right? Whereas people don't generally look at Christianity as something that is channeled because we've changed the language, where we've used a particular language where we've framed it where it's priests that are getting it, or God specifically talked to this one individual, right? We don't say that, oh, these individuals were psychics and they were channeling other entities or anything like that. But the language, but we can draw parallels from how the stories unfolded and stuff like that, right?
Totally.
So
I've had the same sort of, independent of this, I've had the same sort of realization about that kind of thing. Different religions and different faiths sort of doing basically the same thing, but calling it something different, or different language, or different way of describing it.
Exactly. So Dave asked earlier in the beginning of the live stream, like, is it possible for us to live in a world where people can have unity and not everything be monochrome? And I would like to say, like, to my answer to this is Dionysian zones, where I don't know if you guys know about Dionysus, the god of, I mean, Dionysus is in Greek mythology is equivalent to like Jesus, or like what, like what is some of the like really powerful
a rebirth, dying for sin, shall we say?
Right, exactly. A lot of people think of like the sex part of it.
All religions, it seems like, but yes.
Well, part of religion is that sacrifice. Part of the root aspect is to give up something for this salvation, for this otherness, to remove yourself from this place, you know. But honestly, if we're talking about trying to live in a state or a world where we are one human race and everybody is allowed to be their own individual, I mean, we can just give people agency. So you're talking about being afraid that people are too in their bubble, but instead we should on purpose allow people to create their own environments where the environment educates them. So instead of us standardizing, trying to put everybody into this one classroom, everybody should have a hollow cube that they can sit in that is literally perfect for them to be educated and have sensory experience, so that they can have just as much knowledge as whoever else that needs that information in a completely different way, you know?
Right.
So this is why humanity has to evolve, and we have to stop being so primitive about how, like, it's awesome that we still want to have family units and stuff like that, but people should be able to choose at this point, right? And what you're going to find out is there are going to be a lot of people who on purpose would rather be with AI generated personalities that they can have relationships with and be friends with, because it's easy, right? And
you know what? I had that experience where I talked a little bit about talking to the AI about coming up with a personal mantra that I could use to keep in mind, to keep myself motivated and stuff. That conversation that I had, I came out of that like, whoa. That was therapy level shit, where I wasn't afraid that this person was judging me. You know, I wasn't afraid that there was any sort of like human bias involved. And there is, because it's programmed by humans. But I didn't think of it as somebody who was actively judging what I was saying from their subjective point of view, as I was trying to talk to them about my personal shit. And I was like, wait a minute. Maybe this is a therapist.
It's a whole new world.
I told my wife her job as a therapist has been replaced by AI. So
but we're just gonna have to change what we do. Like, there's gonna be people who still need to be taken care of, and they're not gonna want to be taken care of by robots and stuff like that. This is where, so you want communities of people to have children. And maybe people don't want to just have a husband and a wife. Maybe people want to live with their sisters and their best friends, and they live out on a farm, and they just live like that, and they have as many kids as they want. And then the kids that can live in cities or can live in these other communities and stuff like that still have access to be able to do that. People are going to want to live in the country. People are going to want to live in cities, and people are going to want to live at the beach. And we have to stop trying to figure out this one perfect scenario, because it's not going to be one perfect scenario. But what we do need to find out is a single common ground and understanding of how reality works, right? So we know that 1 + 1 = 2, and tomorrow it'll never change to equal 3 or 5 or 7, right? Mathematics is a perfect system that incorporates itself. It makes sense. It doesn't have any errors. One number doesn't randomly turn into some other numbers. It logically makes sense. 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 2 = 3, right? So when we can start,
you were starting to make me think, and you do this a lot. You make me think, and I was just thinking, like, man, I wonder if my complaints about people being in their own bubble is hypocritical or contradictory to my distaste for monoculture, or my fear of, society falling into a monoculture. But then the more you explained what you really were talking about, I realized my real fear, or my real problem I have with the issue I take, is the base reality question. Can we be in a base reality together where we can at least have a common ground where we start from to have conversations from?
Not everybody's going to be there, and we have to come to that acceptance. We have to realize that humanity, first of all, is going to speciate. There's going to be a new humanity on purpose, because people don't want to fall into tradition. People are going to want to take the medicine. They're going to want to genetically evolve. They're going to get implants and stuff like that. They're going to run with whatever they can. They want to be so far away from whatever humanity is today that they will become an alien or a demon the first chance that they get. So we have to realize that we don't need to segregate based off of things like humans or animals and stuff like that. We need to look at each other as other subjective minds having experience at different levels. And not everybody's going to optimize. Not everybody wants to be as extremely rational as possible. And they don't have to be, because technically you don't have to be rational to live a healthy and happy life. That should be for people who on purpose want to optimize themselves and want to understand themselves and then want to exercise that power. What we have to do is make sure that people who are not optimized, who are confused about the world, don't have access to nuclear weapons and stuff like that just because they have money or they're popular on TV and stuff like that. This is why we have to change how we view how reality works. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, if people are living in their bubbles, but they're creative, like, how is the economy going to change? Humanity is going to stop being physical laborers, and we're going to be pure creatives. We're going to have ideas. We're going to love each other. We're going to create beautiful sceneries. People are going to create bouquets in wildflower fields and architecture, because that is what we are innately. We are creators and destroyers. And when we can get to that point, when we can accept that we love music, we love art, just do it. And then we can realize that some people are okay living on farms with animals and being muddy and stuff like that, and we don't have to drag them out into the city. Let's just provide them with the food that they need, or they can provide us with the food that we need while we live in the cities and we manage the economy and we manage all the stuff, and stop enslaving people to this idea that they have to fit into this car world where we're highways and like there's no transportation and your mom has to work,
grind. I gotta go to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like, if you have a hollow cube and you are creating this beautiful scenario like a video game, and other people are trying your game out, they might just join your hollow cube community, and now these are real people with virtual abilities that can create spaces and items, and this is what is a different idea of what humanity can become, instead of still living here like this.
Right. In a way, I've been kind of coming around to the idea of UBI, Universal Basic Income, but not in any way that it's been described so far. But where I think of if the individual in that cube with the UBI, he or she doesn't have to worry about making that money to, to be able to pay for the roof over their head or the food that they got to eat or this kind of thing. And every cube is that UBI, that individual getting that UBI income, shall we say.
Nice.
But
Awesome.
But here's the point. Where I get frustrated, and how I've come around to accepting it a little bit more, is this. You'll never convince the person on the right or the left. You can argue, each side has their points, and they argue and argue and argue. But you know what? Both of them, some of them are just, people on the right are wired differently than people on the left, and you're never going to convince one or the other. That's how we were born. That's just how we are made. And you have to recognize that individual quality, that maybe one is is more creative in the arts or something, and the other one is more analytical and practical, and we as humanity need both.
Right.
And so when I think of the UBI, and that individual in the cube is given all the substance that they need, and they choose a 24-hour 7 whatever game all day and not contribute to society. At first I was like, no, that's not what UBI's got. We gotta put barriers for that. No, they need to contribute to society. Who's going to pay for the UBI, And then I was coming around and thinking, well, they're just like the right and the left. They're wired differently. This is what they're doing. But
first of all, people do that anyway.
Exactly.
Already.
But
so it's not like it's that much different.
They still have to work, though, to be able to put the roof over their head, or you know what I mean? And I'm saying you take that element out of it, where they can do what they will all day long. But guess what? Alan Watts was, when I mentioned Alan Watts, he had mentioned something. Imagine if you could control your dreams, and you could be anything and everything that you wanted within your dream, over and over, night after night after night after night. One day you would traverse the galaxy, and next you would traverse other galaxies, and the next day you're going, the next dream you're going to dream that you have a family and live a golden life. The next one you're going to be a soldier, and you're going to be Hitler maybe, or whatever. Eventually, if you can control your dreams to do anything and whatever you want, guess what? You will have no adversity, and you will get bored. Because why? We need diversity. We need conquest. We need goals. We need to explore. We need triumph, but we also need tribulation. And without that, we won't grow. And that individual with the UBI that just eats and plays games all day, eventually will probably get bored of it and want to do something different.
Or even better, I think that if you think about human creativity and ingenuity and invention and discovery as like all of us together, wouldn't you want? Let's say this is a processor up here. It's a pattern machine. Wouldn't you want a whole bunch of different patterns all working at the same time,
right,
to come up with a bunch of useless ideas? But also some of them you would occasionally get some spark of an idea that you never would have gotten unless somebody was like sitting around dreaming about dragons all day, or something, or just like the variety of thought patterns, the variety of realities that people can live in, that will give you a lot of useless ideas, if you want to call it useless, right? But it gives you the possibility of randomization and the possibility of randomly landing on something that you would otherwise have been cutting out and not allowing this thought patterns to happen. And also I wanted to say that the bit about, I was trying to think about who argued for what you were talking about with the conquest being like human nature being that you need the struggle, you need the conquest, you need the challenge, so that you can feel the sort of the accomplishment of overcoming them and things like that. It was Ted Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. If you read the Unabomber Manifesto, he talks about that, and it's one of the more interesting parts. A lot of it is like shitting on liberals, but there's a few paragraphs in the manifesto where he talks about exactly that, and it's like not that I think people should go join the Kaczynski cult, but
no violence.
But it's also interestingly an example of what I was just talking about, where somebody has a bunch of shitty ideas, but there's a couple of paragraphs in there that make you think, like, actually, all right, fuck all of that, except that's okay. I'll take that and put it over here and say, all right, this little nugget, maybe you in your context is not good, but out of your context, that's an interesting thing to think about.
Earlier, for I am, you're kind of like putting it in this frame where they're actually isolated from others, when just because you're in this cube doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually isolated, because we have the internet and stuff like that. And this is also why we can, instead of them just being in cubes doing nothing, but we have these robots that are doing labor for us, and we have such advanced technology where our thoughts are being able to be read or projected, period, right, through neuro wearables, right? Then we could just design landscapes. We can have people who are on purpose, like, go ahead, use your robots from your cube to design a landscape. And somebody else can be like, I don't like this landscape like this. And you can go to war like that. And guess what? Your robots can fight it out. And you can decide on who's really going to take over this territory. So there's always going to be other options, and there's going to be ways that we can implement this. Even if it's just a virtual space where you can invite people to play games with you, people are going to be like, I hate this game and I want to destroy it. And mental disorder isn't going to go away. We're not going to live in a utopia where no disorder exists. Disorder is still going to be there, but we're going to have to create a function for it on purpose. What happens when there's these individuals in these cubes that can create virtual worlds of their nightmares, and other people can come there and conquer their nightmares with them or for them, or experience something that has the opportunity or the potential to traumatize them? Because there's people who go to fun houses not thinking that they're or haunted houses not thinking that they're really going to get scared, and they get scared and stuff like that, you know.
Bro, Saw X is coming out this month. People intent Saw 10 is coming out this month. People do intentionally traumatize themselves. They expose themselves to things that are, you know, it's like,
y'all got it. I'm good.
There's a lot. People's interests are all over the place.
Self-harming is something that people go through so that they can experience something on purpose. So instead of allowing people to just willy-nilly just try hurting themselves, we can set up boundaries and barriers for, like, okay, you're only 10 years old, so the scariest thing that you need to see is something at rank 1, you know? Like, humanity could be so much more than what it is, and it's so limiting, you know, like this idea. So we were talking about China and Japan earlier. Right now we're talking about Japan has too many women and China has too many men, right? If they didn't have this horrible history about right, if they didn't have a horrible history, that actually wouldn't be a problem. It would be like, hey, my neighbors, why don't we just actually become one? And then humanity can look at each other and be like, oh, we're not actually people from these different locations. We're just one humanity, and we need to stop acting so segregated and just come together. You know?
Because they call themselves Japanese or Chinese. They don't call themselves humans.
Right, exactly. So it's not an actual problem. We think we have problems, but we have man-made issues that aren't problems tomorrow if we just decide to stop making them problems. They're problems today because we are stuck with a mindset that does not fit or conform to how reality actually is, how people's feelings are, what the world could be, and where we are at technologically or intellectually. You know, it just, we're stunted at this point. But it's getting late, so I'm gonna have to get off of here soon. Yeah, and I'm sorry we've kept you guys for so long. It was a great.
No, I'm here for it, man. I'm here for it. Anytime you want to show up, I'll stay up for it.
Yeah.
I wish I would have been prepared for this. I've been working since 6 o'clock this morning, and the reason I came in late was because I just got home. So I appreciate you guys so much.
Likewise, man.
I'm gonna keep doing these. I'm gonna keep doing these Wednesday evening, and if nobody's on at first, I'm just gonna look and see what people are posting on Den. Talk about what's on my mind, and if you guys want to show up, we'll go for a while. And if nobody shows up because everyone's busy, that's fine too. I'll cut it after 40 minutes and be like, all right, cool, see you next week. Not a big deal. So this is going to continue to be an open forum where anybody can show up. And sometimes this is great. Like I wasn't sure what to expect tonight because we just started doing this. I just started doing this in the evening too. This was fantastic. I cherish this conversation that we had tonight.
Likewise.
I really appreciate both of you.
Likewise.
Thank you guys.
Well, let's go ahead and call it then, man. Because I want to get out of here too. I gotta go. I gotta get ready. I gotta go back to the zoo. Let me tell you my zoo story real quick. Since it was in the title, I was working at the zoo. Did I say it? I don't know if I said it at the beginning of when I was alone or not. I'll say it again. I was looking for a particular piece of equipment. I was trying to figure out why it wasn't on the network. It was a computer problem, and I'm at the zoo. I'm at the medical vet where they take care of the animals, all the animals in the zoo, gazelle, snakes, whatever. And this particular switch, this IT switch we were looking for, was in one of the rehab rooms, the rehabilitation rooms. So we went in. We didn't know which one though. So we went into one, and there was a gorilla skeleton. He had died last year or something, and they had him all articulated and put together. And he was sitting there with his hand on his face. In his left hand, his fingers had not been attached or had fallen off except his middle finger. And they had him sitting there flipping off the earth, like looking at the ground, And I was like, bro, that's a gorilla? Like a real ass skeleton? And so the switch wasn't in there. So let's go to the next room. I'm like, all right, I'm seeing some shit. And so the next one, they were like, this one, there's like a kind of a flighty bird that we're rehabilitating in this one. So if don't mind him. So I'll go in there, and the bird was fine. Whatever, but the switch wasn't in there. It ended up being in the last room we looked at, the fourth room. The third room we go in. They're like, this one's basically empty. There's nothing really to worry about in here, except there are some rattlesnakes in the back corner. And I was like, some what? And so I go in, and sure enough, in the back corner, there's a big red box with a window on it with rattlesnakes in it. And it says, warning, venomous snakes. And I was like, man, this is like the coolest work day that I've had in so long, trying to figure out where this IT switch is, this cabinet, going through like these back rooms in the zoo's like med vet building, and fucking rattlesnakes. So anyway, that happened to me this week. I just wanted to share that because it was like a unique experience, and plus going back and forth to the different buildings on the back roads, the back trails, employee only kind of stuff. A lot of these are like a mile apart, where you control this building from that building way over there. It was like Jurassic Park. It was like going through Jurassic Park back there. There's like hippos and elephants and rhinos and stuff like that. So that's been cool. I just wanted to share that because I didn't.
Cool experience at the zoo.
Yeah.
But you won't forget.
All right. That I won't forget. So with that,
thanks, Distance, for this. Thanks, Cerebral, for showing up. And I really enjoyed this conversation tonight. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
I'll catch up with y'all next week or whenever I see you around, all right? So here's that song I always play from our favorite animal friend on Den, Y'all Weird, called Into the Dragon. Good night, y'all.
Hey.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best. Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. A doctoral approach is palpable if this animal is fallible, but that conclusion is laughable. So with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now.